Good morning, everybody. My heart's beating like a lot, and I kind of have to press back my tears after seeing this video, so I'm having a little bit of a hard time to get into the right space of mind to now speak to you about teachers and technology. But at the end of the day, maybe it's not really that big of a stretch, because to get teachers to effectively use technology is also behavior change. It's also about communication. It's about forming habits, good habits of instruction, which are started off by good information about what is good instruction, and about good design of projects that help these teachers get access to the resources and the knowledge that they need in order to be able to deliver good instruction. I was born and raised in the city of Ravensburg in southern Germany. And why do you think that may actually be important, apart from the fact that it explains my accent? Well, it is really important, I think, because Ravensburg is actually the world capital of games and jigsaw puzzles. Thank you! Ravensburger, the company, which is actually founded in my little city, and I have lots of stories about how that influenced my childhood, because we got to test all the games before they went to market, which was just awesome. But Ravensburger is also in the Guinness Book of World Records with the largest commercially available jigsaw puzzle, with over 32,200 pieces. So, of course, I'm like genetically designed to love jigsaw puzzles. And the focus of my last 15 years of work, designing, implementing, and evaluating education technologies around the world, really seems like one giant living jigsaw puzzle to me, to which I still constantly find new pieces. Who in the audience recalls Wikipedia's logo? Anybody? Yes, sir? Okay, so this is what it looks like. This logo is basically a globe made out of jigsaw pieces. And according to Wikipedia itself, and now you can believe this or not, depending on your attitude to Wikipedia, the incomplete sphere here has pieces missing. And it's really their way to illustrate the languages, the pieces of knowledge, the pages still missing in this ongoing project. And so I similarly stand here in front of you today with my giant jigsaw puzzle that, in spite of so many years working on fitting pieces, not fitting pieces, and trying to make them fit, still has many, many pieces missing. Experiences, tools, and lessons that I do not, or we may not, have yet. So in the coming minutes, I would like to take you along a journey of two different technology initiatives that involve teachers in Samoa and Kenya, and share with you some of the pieces we have found and where we think some are still missing. Now, while there are many more, I'll focus on each initiative's main puzzle pieces, basically the elements of objective, the educational objective of your initiative, the element of cost, the technology deployed, the training and support, and teacher support, and monitoring and evaluation. Now, to start with, let us travel to the other side of the globe, to the independent Pacific island nation of Samoa. I worked and also lived in Samoa over a time span of 8 years. As you can see, it was clearly a hardship location. Sandy beaches, palm trees, and sunshine. I was implementing 2 successive education technology initiatives funded by the Asian Development Bank. The Samoa SchoolNet and Community Access Project started in 2009 and was aimed to improve secondary education, specifically grades 12 and 13, in 6 subjects: agricultural science, biology, chemistry, English, mathematics, and physics. The most fundamental puzzle piece when it comes to technology and teachers really is to understand the problem and to disaggregate your educational objective to the most detailed level you're able to do. In Samoa, we learned that a key problem was teacher content knowledge, as well as the lack of teaching and learning resources, particularly to teach those science subjects. The problems were systematic throughout the entire curriculum areas of those subjects in both grades. So it was virtually impossible for us in that specific context to drill down further while still be keeping with the mandate of our project. So what did we do? Well, we decided to provide comprehensive electronic courseware covering as much of the curriculum as was possible directly to students and teachers. And we started what good projects should be doing based on our experience with open electronic resources. So we spent weeks and weeks trying to mine the internet to basically match open electronic resources to the curricular objectives of those 2 grades and 6 subjects. And we had to stop that. Given the scope of this, we virtually would have had to piece together hundreds of learning resources from different authors, using different user interfaces, different languages, basically requiring us to train teachers at the individual resource level so that they could effectively use those resources in the classroom. We just could not make that puzzle piece fit. So what did we do instead? We purchased some of the best courseware money could buy. This is a significantly different approach than what most technology projects in the development world would take. And it certainly is an obstacle to scale. But it was a crucial puzzle piece in this very small country with like 38 secondary schools for us to make this work. So these resources allow students to self-study and practice nearly the entire curriculum content for both of the grades. Would I choose this courseware again? Absolutely. The content integrates text, video, audio, simulation, interactivity, and practice. And it uses context-appropriate language. It's correct, it's highly appealing, and it was extremely easy to access and navigate. We provided this courseware on 14 thin client terminals situated in a learning center in each school. So this setup, as you can see here, really includes only like a screen, a keyboard, a mouse, and then this little processor station here, and now you can get even smaller ones for each of those terminals. And these then connect to a server. So the whole point here was that because everything was driven by the server, you couldn't install anything, you couldn't introduce any viruses, you couldn't delete anything. And also, our setup didn't include any internet at all. So, broadband really wasn't a requirement for this specific use and for the teachers and the students to effectively use those resources. Back then, this thin client setup was rather innovative. It's highly cost-effective, has a low energy footprint, and because of that central setup, it was really easy to maintain. We finished the rollout in 2014, early 2014, and in the last 1.5 years had barely any issues. For teacher training, we also deviated from the more traditional approach of initial training that includes all aspects of the hardware, and then all of the productivity software, and then all of the content. We didn't do any of that. We virtually only trained them on how to turn on the station, log in, and navigate the courseware. And we did that in 1 day. But then we followed that with 1.5 years of coaching, where coaches would come to the school and they would see teachers at least once or twice a month and basically work with them to prepare lessons, to observe them while they gave lessons, and to help them address questions or issues that they may have. This approach to professional development was a critical puzzle piece for Samoa, but it also really emerged as a good practice, and that we used it now in other RTI-led technology initiatives. The final puzzle piece that we put there together is what we call model learning activities. So evidence from reliable studies shown that the same content implemented in different locations with different teachers and different schools could yield significantly different outcomes. So it's not just the what of the content that matters, but it's also the how. That is, how is this content used and implemented to support teaching and learning in a specific context? So we worked with these coaches to produce over 600 of these model learning activities. And they basically describe potential scenarios of how to use these resources in matching with the curriculum content within the course of the lesson. This puzzle piece took us a while to fit because we needed to make sure that it was easy enough for the teachers to understand. We also didn't want to undermine their professional autonomy. There was a lot of sensitivity around that. But ultimately, we did manage for the teachers to use it to at least match the resources to the appropriate curricular content. However, I also have to say that we were not successful in really making them innovate upon those, meaning that they would integrate it differently in different lessons or kind of build their own lesson around it. My biggest regret for this specific initiative, however, is that we did not manage to implement a proper monitoring and evaluation system. This was aggravated by the fact of that scope that I mentioned earlier. So here, we know that probably about 14 schools are really using that learning center effectively. Another 14, they use it, okay? And 8 probably don't use it at all. So we can deduct from observations and from protocols of these coaches that for those 28 schools, the opportunity to learn for the students has increased dramatically. But in absence of a rigorous monitoring and evaluation framework, I have no story to tell in terms of how that impacted actual student learning outcomes. So for this one, we have a big piece of the puzzle missing, and cost and educational objective really did give us a challenge. Now let me take you from the sandy beaches of Samoa to the hills of Kenya, and into an entirely different puzzle. In Kenya, RTI was implementing from 2010 to 2014 an early reading and numeracy project funded by USAID. We developed a revised curriculum for teaching reading and made sure that each student got their textbook. We trained and supported teachers. And then we implemented this new approach for over a year. And it went very, very well. We had dramatic improvements in student learning outcomes measured rigorously and reliably. However, 2 areas emerged as being difficult for teachers: pronunciation and continuous assessment. Many teachers in Kenya do not actually speak Kiswahili as their mother tongue. And then being asked to teach reading in a way that places much focus on pronunciation, on phonemic awareness, was a tough one for these teachers to bridge from their actual mother tongues. So, to better inform the government about where true value of investment may lie, we actually implemented a randomized controlled trial in 80 schools in Kisumu in Kenya throughout 2013 with joint funding from USAID and DFID to look at how can we improve reading instruction and where would technology make sense or add value to the teaching of reading. We designed resources specifically to address the problems identified: pronunciation and continuous assessment, and nothing else, okay? For pronunciation, we produced 2 things. One little software called Papaya, which is in essence nothing more than a little phonological awareness trainer. You tap on a letter, and the application sounds it out to you. But you can also record yourself and listen yourself against that gold standard of how the sound is supposed to be pronounced. Next, we provided what we call electronic or multimedia lesson plans. So this is their actual lesson plan. We provided that in an electronic version, and then we embedded sound files exactly where in the lesson there is a specific pronunciation or phonemic awareness related activity. And we recorded that so that teachers could start developing a cognitive model of what it's supposed to sound like. For assessment, we designed a software called Tangerine Class that basically allowed teachers to conduct a baseline assessment with all of their students to get a sense of their ability to start the year off. And then the system incorporated, entirely aligned with the teacher guide, sort of mini tests that they conduct with a sample of their students on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And with these results, teachers were basically able to know whether they could go ahead in the curriculum or whether they had to reteach item from the previous unit. It also helped them group students, knowing which of the students are doing well and which of the students are doing not so well. They ended up pulling those in red out for remedial intervention. About 60 to 70% of teachers, we think, based on our log and based on interviews with the teachers, use Tangerine class on a regular basis, but probably not weekly. The others rarely used it. Now, that may not sound quite that impressive, but if you compare that to how many teachers did any kind of continuous assessment at all in the non-technology intervention, where we estimate it may have been like 10 or 15% of teachers doing anything in terms of continuous assessment, it's a big step for behavior change. We think this software has great potential, but we don't have the data right now to know the unique contribution that just this specific software has provided in the overall improved reading outcomes that we observed. And I'll get back to what the actual outcomes were. But just to explain how that looked like, we actually deployed this on 7-inch tablet devices to these teachers. We gave them a cover, a stylus, and the charger, and nothing else. No electricity allowances. We talked about this the other day in the workshop, right? There is a sense of responsibility and of ownership the users need to take. And in spite of only 30% of these teachers having electricity in their houses, we never had an issue with charging. We also did not lose or had a breakage in a single tablet device in an entire school year. We trained teachers in 5-day initial training, but we added virtually very, very little time for the technology. We basically delivered the same training, but when we talked about phonemic awareness, we gave them the tablet, and they had to do it immediately on the tablet. So it wasn't any sort of additional time that we used for it. Study outcomes were significant. We had, as said, this very rigorous monitoring evaluation framework. So in addition to this teacher intervention group, we had 2 other intervention groups. A TAC tutor intervention group. TAC tutors are basically, they used to be like inspectors in Kenya, okay? They come to the school and usually they drink coffee, but they were supposed to collect data. And then they're supposed to provide pedagogical support. And in recent years, we have worked a lot with the government of Kenya to basically reframe what they do during those school visits. And so now they're actually really providing pedagogical support to the teachers. So that was one group. The teacher tablet group was the other one. And then we worked with our partner World Reader to provide e-readers with just additional text and no other resources to pupils in 20 of those schools. So study outcomes, as you can see, were significant, and they were actually statistically significant across all 3 intervention groups. But you can see it's like up to a 10-word difference for English between baseline and end line and the gains that were made, particularly for this TAC tutor group. So these are very impressive results. Let me maybe just put a little bit of disclaimer on this. If you have a very low baseline, meaning if kids at the beginning of grade 2 can barely read 9 correct words per minute, to improve on that isn't really that hard. It's a lot harder to improve on already good performance. So these results are amazing, and they truly are. But it's also sad in a way, because we know where these kids started. 2 critical lessons contributed to the success in Kenya. Our content was laser-like focused on very specific problems. We did not aim on technology to improve education, or even technology to improve reading. No, this was pronunciation and continuous assessment. This, from all what we have learned, was a very critical puzzle piece. Next, we did not implement this in isolation, but we embedded it in this non-technology intervention with the new good textbooks, with teacher training, with support. And it was already an extremely successful program, but through the technology, we were actually able to amplify it, okay? So if we've not had all of those things, those results wouldn't be as impressive. The final critical piece in the puzzle ended up being cost. We calculated that the per student cost of the intervention was $40 for the school year for the student e-reader group. You see that here at the bottom. Lots of dollars. $3 for the teacher tablet group, and 10 cents for the TAC tutor group. Now, if you think about the country of Kenya, I think it's very obvious in terms of what makes sense. So if you think about it just another way, for every dollar of investment, we managed to get nearly 12 correct words per minute improvement with the intervention that focused on providing better material support and guidance to the teachers through the TAC tutors. We got an improvement of nearly 7 words by providing the tablet directly to the teachers for each dollar invested. And we got 1 word out of $1, giving a tablet, an e-reader, to the students. The implications of this study were significant. The government of Kenya finally had informative data to make decisions on where technology may add value and at what cost. Given the scarce resources, the country decided, in consultation with donors and RTI, to scale up the TAC tutor intervention nationwide. Thanks to funding from DFID and the generous support of our friends at Invenio and their technical assistance, we were able to provide a tablet device to every TAC tutor in the country. There are actually 1,056 of them. And then we customized Tangerine Class further, developing a TAC tutor-appropriate version called Tangerine Tutor. We trialed that approach in 70 zones of Kenya in 2014 and scaled it up nationwide as of a few months ago. To my knowledge, this is the only nationwide mobile technology initiative in education in the developing world that is based on a comparable initial study and value for investment consideration. Many, many puzzle pieces came together for this to happen, and there's yet a lot of knowledge to gain to fill missing pieces. The picture is not yet complete. So in summary, I cannot stress enough the importance to consider, at minimum, in a program like that, the crucial elements of educational objective, content targeted specifically at that educational objective. Don't get distracted by all the other noise, okay? And technology that is practical and viable to access that content for your specific target group. And then making sure that you have a long-term support and professional development model available to ensure that behavior change becomes a habit, okay? And if you want to know whether your investment has actually yielded any improvements on your education objective, it's essential to have a monitoring and evaluation framework that includes cost elements. This is to make sure that you actually have an honest story to tell and are able to truly show the full picture of your jigsaw puzzle to change, to the better, the stories there are to tell about technology and teachers. Thank you very much.